Let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome back to Thicc Radio, the award-winning podcast where we talk about gaining, fetishism, and everything plus size. Today I'm a special little hat. I'm a little hat that you can only get once in a while at a little event that happens sometimes here in London. James.
And I'm the friend that your mom didn't like because she's probably sleeping with your father, Tim.
And I'm the big wide man that buffet owners hate to see coming, the Captain Bara.
Well, welcome. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. And today we have a very special guest with us here on this Reflections episode. We have none other than Phil X, also known as Ganza. Welcome to the show, honey.
Wow, thank you very much.
It's so great to have you on the show here, Phil. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, I have been excited ever since I first talked with all of you, and I love talking about our community.
We were very excited to have you on. Not so long ago, we sat down and had the conversation around elder statesmen of our space. As a podcast, we've always really endeavored to make an effort to have people of all ages, all experiences and backgrounds on the pod. And one of the communities that admittedly we've struggled to connect with the most is an older population, especially people whose instigation in the community maybe goes back a little further than most. And so we were talking with Cap if there were people that he referenced, people that he felt really connected to, and yours was the first name that came up on the list. Getting to meet you and have that initial conversation was really such a delight. So I'm really looking forward to this episode today, getting to plumb a little bit of your background and have the listeners get to know you a little bit more. So Phil, are you ready to get stuck into it?
Let's do it.
I would like to say, Phil, first and foremostly, like your charm and wit do shine bright with you. It's very clear that throughout your life, you've been a very charismatic individual, I would say. Just something that seems to sting from your soul. So listen, I think as a first port of call, let's take it all the way back. When you reflect on your life, when did you first realize that you were drawn to bigger bodies and that this fascination with them might be something lasting and not just a passing curiosity?
I have been fleshing this out a little bit more since our first conversation. And I think that I probably started to have dreams and take notice of men with bellies when I was like 7 or 8. And thinking further about that, I started thinking, well, gee, it wasn't just those two hot neighbors. There had to have been another source. And then I realized that it was also church on Sunday.
Oh.
And, the odd teacher, year in, year out, and either there was a hint of a belly coming in or the fantasy of a belly coming in. By the time I hit high school, this was a full-blown fantasy for me, and it was pivotal to my puberty.
No, absolutely. That sounds very relatable to, I think, a lot of our experiences. Just some person, whether in, real life or on TV, usually catches our eye at some point, and something about, them being a little different than all the rest kind of sticks with us. And, I'm sure it was very hard to kind of put words to for a time until, there was no denying it, I'm sure.
Well, it's not something that you can talk to anybody about.
Right.
And you never hear anybody else talking about it. And so you kind of keep it, boxed in. I didn't really think of it in terms of, shame or, whatever. It wasn't like sexuality, where there was a lot of conversation flying around about, faggot and you ought to be ashamed of yourself, stuff like that. You never ever engaged in a conversation about liking bellies.
No.
And so it just ends up being, or it ended up being for me, something that I just thought was, like my birthmark. And I often wondered where it came from. And I don't exactly relate to this theory, but I did develop this theory that this might have come from my mother's pregnant belly, because I have a brother who's a year and a half younger than I am. And
Mhm.
so, probably around the time that I learned to walk, I was reaching up at a round, firm belly. Maybe, maybe
That
not.
that would certainly be the Freudian
Yeah, I
explanation.
was just about to say that myself. I said that sounds like something that Freud
But
would
it's
say.
also very, it's very touchy-feely,
Yeah, and an
which
Yeah,
is, I mean, what we
sensory
all love about
perception.
bellies.
Yeah.
early sensory information. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of your earlier life, you've described, since being so young that you had what you called a feeder chip, which I really love that, by the way. But how was it to have that? You had this attraction, this awareness at a young age and growing up, and this is all in a pre-internet era. This is all when it's still very disconnected. So, like, what was that like for you?
I've been involved in the arts all my life. And so I really revere my imagination. And I can remember making up this game when I was lying in bed at night and I was thinking about the man who lived a couple of doors down, and he had started to put on weight. And I getting excited about the prospect of how big he would get. And one night there was this breeze flowing through my bedroom and it was blowing the curtains. And I was watching the curtains because, of course, they were creating this bow shape. And I played this game with myself that the next gust of wind was how fat he was going to get. And so I just entertained myself. I mean, of course, we had no choices, we had no alternatives.
I can imagine back then there was so much more room for one to use one's own imagination. And I
I
relate to
think
that
so.
even having grown up in the infancy of the internet. I mean, the fantasies one has as an adolescent and a teen, especially without the internet, I'd imagine it's a very different experience than younger people now, for whom so much is presented to them so immediately, right?
Yeah, was nothing specific
Hmm.
around for me to go hide behind a chair and look at. You know,
No,
the I
completely.
was reminded the other day, and I, kind of filed it that I should bring this up. And I'm sure that it probably is similar to a young straight guy trying to check out a woman with big tits.
Right.
There was the how to check out a belly without anyone noticing you. And I had that down to what I considered, a really smooth running move. And, you know, I'd be in the grocery store. The hardware store was like a gold mine. And yeah,
I feel
That's
like that's
very
a skill that
relatable.
we all cultivated, honestly. I mean,
Oh
anyone who's
yeah.
been into this community, we've all had to do, like, I remember when one of the websites that I don't think is around anymore, it was called the Oinquirer. It was supposed to be like a fat tabloid kind of thing. And it
yeah.
was just mostly candid shots of like some celebrities, but then like regular people too, in like Walmarts and whatnot. And it just was like I believe it was maybe in the Warren Davis thing where I mentioned like all of a sudden like if you're a member of this community when that is a possibility you suddenly become like a wildlife photographer. You're like David Attenborough, like trying to get the Dutch angle, like you're trying to like the zoom in angle, the
Hmm.
overhead shot.
I think even to this day, it's still quite commonplace in terms of gainer desire. We often keep an eye out for men on the street, right? And there is something, obviously it's salacious for us, but also we're very aware that society at large, doesn't understand that size can be sexy. And so, in a way, those men are not busy being self-conscious about their bodies and thinking, ooh, I'm worried about people looking at me in a certain type of way. They aren't looking at themselves that way. So when we look at them, quite often it doesn't get clocked. It doesn't get noticed because no one's thinking that a man is looking at a larger man and thinking certain thoughts. Although maybe these days, possibly a little bit different, but even when I'm on the tube, like I still find myself being able to eyeball a man and sort of situationally aware. Like I'm probably not being clocked, but the fact that I'm seeing this man and observing what I'm observing. And there is, in a way, a comfort in being able to like feast your eyes in public, in private. Like I know that I am not being observing. I can sort of sit here and witness the beauty and not feel like people are judging me for the thing that I like, which is this larger, older man?
Oh, fully. And the trope of the fat neighbor that you bring up, Phil, is very relatable as well. I remember getting my fair share of eye candy, looking at fat dads mowing the lawn completely shirtless in the neighborhood, and it felt so scandalous. I was like, oh, you can do that? Hot.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And so, as reflecting back on your story, for many years you believed that you might have been the only person who felt this way, as many of us do. What was it like carrying that sense of isolation?
I don't think that I really digested that. It
Mm,
it was a part of me,
mm,
and it wasn't until when we were just talking about seeing big men on the tube or
mm,
whatever. Most people I know that I'm a feeder. We talked
mm,
about that before. And my younger brother, who oftentimes works with me, knows that I'm a feeder and that I like bellies. And so it for me, it wasn't until I was able to be sitting on the tube with someone like my brother and elbow him and say, check the belly on the guy standing next to the, because I love talking about bellies just in random conversation as you know, Data.
Well, therein lies a good question, because I think many people in the community feel very much at odds with the notion of anyone finding out, partners even, let alone members of the family and friends. Can you talk us through a little bit when you began to share that with friends and family? What was that initial response like, and how do they handle those conversations now?
When we had our original conversation, and I said to you at the time that coming from the background that I came from, I came out very late. And it was a really difficult rebirth. But so when I found the community and I found a community of feeders and gainers and was able to identify myself as not alone in this, but someone who had a kink. I decided that I was going to avenge my coming out and that instead of just, being a feeder to a gainer, I was going to let everybody know that I had just discovered that something I had carried with me all my life had a community and that I was a feeder. And I was surprised at how fascinated almost everyone was. And it started many conversations, and I found a handful of people who eventually kind of came back to me in later conversations to tell me about their kinks. And their kinks were not feeder gainer related, but
Sure.
they had been carrying around this big question mark of, why am I like this? And, things that people with kinks think about. But for the most part, I have people in my life who will elbow me on the tube and say, "Hey, look at that guy. I bet you'd like to get to know him." And so I have a lot of fun with my identity.
No, certainly. And there's a power really in coming out and speaking frankly, both about one's sexuality, but also interests in life, really. That makes me think of a quote that stuck with me from the years by author Armistead Maupin, who wrote Tales of the City. And he mentioned that the world changes in direct proportion to how honest people are willing to be about their own lives. And so that absolutely rings true in this instance, as it does in many.
I mean, while I was talking about before I recognized that I was a feeder, I often teased my late partner, Danny, and begged him to get fat for me.
And
And
what was that like? What was his response?
well, I mean, it of course created a conversation. I mean, at first, of course, he just thought that, I was out of my mind and, like, why, why would he ever get fat? But then it evolved into a conversation, and my explanation to him was just very simple, that I think what I used to say was, you know, oftentimes what looks good doesn't feel good.
Mm,
And, for instance, you encounter a tall, very slender guy who's as handsome as a model and might be a model at a gay bar, and you go home with him, and you realize that this body type doesn't feel good to you.
right,
Part of your sexuality, your sensuality is, there is an attraction to something bigger, something more substantial, something, I mean, I think that holding an underbelly in your hand is one of the sexiest feelings that you could ever imagine.
Oh yeah.
But most people don't, that would never cross their minds
Hmm.
unless you point it out to them.
Yeah, I think many of us have those experiences of playing with larger men outside of the community space and often wind up being the first person they've ever encountered who made them feel a way about their body because everyone else is out here saying you're sexy in spite of your weight. Whereas we're the ones saying, no, no, you're sexy because of, and allow me to take a moment to all over from head to toe. I have told this story before. I'm very proud. I once made a man come without having touched the nads. I didn't touch nothing downstairs, but I made that man cream because I would not let up all over his chest, his belly, his handles, and his upper arms. That was all I did, and that was enough to drive this man over the edge. And we talked about it afterwards. He was marveled, going, I did not know this was possible. How did you do that? What did you do? Baby, what I did was I fucking went in on your fat. I went in on your body in a way that it deserves to be gone in on. And your body responded because your body knows what's up. Your body's like, yes, let me feel all the glory. And baby, he felt that and more. So, like taking time to worship on a body. And like, it's not like, like I'm not like repulsed by genitals. It's not that. It's more I'm just like my favorite part of a dick is when it's being swallowed up by a lovely fat pad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that part. And it's like, if that's what we're going with, oh, I know exactly what to do down here. But like, when people are so singularly focused on there is only one thing that matters in sex, there's only one part of the body that matters, and everything else does this, you're missing out on the ironic smorgasbord of like everything you could have.
Right, it's like going to a buffet and just getting the chicken nuggets. There is so much more to be enjoyed and savored.
Yeah, that reminds me of a particular experience where a guy that I had met the night before, and we went out for a coffee the following morning, and as for walking, he says, "I hope we get together again." I've I, n- n- no one has ever enjoyed my body the way that you did, and it was because I was focused on his belly, his underbelly, his titties. Yeah.
So, when you first found the community online, what made Grommr feel different or like a true community for you? And how have those connections grown into lasting friendships?
When I found Grommr online, it was directly related to Tumblr. I'd been directed by a friend to check out some things on Tumblr, and I mean, I was absolutely surprised at what I was seeing and the places that I could go. And then somebody in a post mentioned Grommr, and that was how I found it. And I threw myself into the chatting because I'd been doing that on, what Atom for Atom and, different chat rooms for years. And by that stage of the game, I knew how to approach it or logistics of approaching it. And like with any other chat room, I would message and I would get a message back. And, either something would be a bullseye or it would go dreadfully wrong. And so, I got snubbed, I got surprised, and I made connections. I have a lot of friends that I've been talking to, local friends that I've met and had lunch or dinner with, and not had any interaction with them. And I love that. It's the same in a way of, being on the subway and being able to nudge somebody and say, "Hey, look at the belly over there." You're making friends within your community. I've got a friend that I've been chatting with on Grommr for at least 10 years, and he lives in Munich, and he is an avid fan of international politics. And we talk every Saturday. We've never met. We talk a little bit about, food, and we both like to cook. We trade recipes and stuff. But primarily, while we have confessed our attraction to each other, we talk about politics. And then there are the guys that I've met. Most of the guys from Grommr have approached me.
And that brings us to our next question, actually. You mentioned before when we've spoken that you've often been sought out by younger men, both inside and outside the gainer space.
Right.
When did you start to recognize this daddy role forming around you?
Well, because that predates Grommr,
Mhm.
it didn't surprise me so much with Grommr, but I did probably after a year notice that I had my target fan base.
And that kind of brings us to how we initially connected. At the time, I was a young, skinny grad student wanting to bulk up, and I knew that you were very knowledgeable about weightlifting and bulking up. and we've even been to the gym together
We
a
went to the
couple of
gym
times.
together. Yeah.
That's right. And so I really appreciated your sage wisdom and your guidance because it's helped me turn into a larger, beefier man myself.
Well, I mean, you were, as time went on, and when I say as years go by, I don't mean like, years and years and years, but you made really rapid progress, which of course, is breathtaking for a feeder. But you have a discipline. You're very focused and you've got a discipline. And I, of course, didn't know you that well. And so for me to see you make such rapid and incredible progress was thrilling. And so, well, no, you became my daughter before before that.
Absolutely. It's kind of akin, our relationship is kind of akin to like a drag mother and a drag daughter, I
Yeah.
feel like. Hence why I call you mother.
Well, exactly. And I mean, as we chatted, and I think that that was even like before we met, and I mean, my favorite kind of chats, we were all over the map, our interests and we got each other.
Hmm.
And then you found out that I had a connection to the ball world. And that was where the mother-daughter, that came from Pose, the TV show,
Yes.
because there was that one wonderful character who had the accent and she was calling all of her girls her daughters. You are my daughter.
It's interesting to witness this in the round because I feel like we've talked about this a little bit, Tim, broadly speaking. In the gainer community, there is not a lot of mentorship. There is not a lot of cross-generational connection. And I understand to a degree it comes down to AIDS, it comes down to devastation and travesty, and the fact that as a collective group, we have not developed such a keen sense of maybe seeking out elders because maybe there haven't been as many elders to seek out, to learn from, to be connected with. But it's quite beautiful just getting to sit here and see you two have a little bit of banter, that there's really something quite beautiful in a relationship, in a connection that develops within queer men where you are allowed to have something of a mentor, of a parent, of a love, of a kindness, of a niceness. I think it probably sets you up, Cap, would you say, for like more success in your gaining journey, would you say, maybe?
Well, absolutely. I mean, in the same way people talk about the significance of family in a nuclear sense, queer family and chosen family are extremely important, and for that I am extremely grateful to have Phil be a part of my queer family.
And I, proud of you. But my hands just won't let me do that.
That's quite all right.
While we were talking, I realized that I was messaged and chatted just today with two guys, one from Seattle and one from, I can't remember where in Germany he was from. And both of them are university students, and they stumbled on my profile, and they are new to the community, and they wondered if I would chat with them. And I actually really didn't have time, but I made a little bit of time because I think that that's important. I wish that I would have had that.
Absolutely. We also talk about here on the pod, like part of the premise of what we do is to specifically focus less on the sex and more on everything else, because as a collective, we're very good at telling one another what we find very sexy and arousing about what we're all doing. But sometimes we really do struggle to find space, it seems, to talk about everything else, the emotional, the psychological, the social. And so it's wonderful that you have that mindset that says, allow me to make an effort to find some time to give that to someone who needs it. Because, of course, they probably are in many ways very horny, feeling very overwhelmed, as we all did when we first arrived in this space. But people who give of that energy to sort of allow you this freedom to go, it's okay, let's have that moment. And now we can move forward. Now we can have the real conversation. Yes, maybe we're still enjoying what we're doing, but also now we've sort of alleviated the fantasy a little bit. Let's talk about the reality. Do you really, really want this? And if so, what can I do to help facilitate that for you in a social way, in some other kind of a fashion? I think that's very important. It helps people who, if you really, really want to do the thing, to work through that. So bless you for doing the work.
Now, to circle back for a second to the daddy identity, because it's something that I too lean heavily into, and it was something that I can remember started at when I turned 30, and I was like, I think I'm a little too young for that, aren't I? But then the more it came on, and the more it was like, okay, so this is like a real thing. Like people are really getting into this identity for me, and I was like, hell yeah, I'll lean into it because it is that it's yes, it's a sexy thing, but it is also kind of a mentor thing because like I do feel like, I'm never going to, I don't know what my contribution to the world is going to be, right? So I do like leaning into the daddy thing in order to also help facilitate maybe some advice to people that are younger than I am. Do you also look at it that way?
I actually stay away from the word daddy as
Mm,
long as I can. I usually, when asked, for instance, what should I call you? And I will say, some gainers like to call me coach,
mm,
and some gainers like to call me Phil. But then later on in the chat, he'll call me daddy one day, and
mm,
I'm perfectly comfortable with it. But there's a faction that really are very comfortable and attracted to and fascinated by the daddy. But then you've got the other side of it who are just revolted by it.
No, I mean it's a tricky one, right? Like, because anytime there's like age discrepancies, like the conversation comes up, right? Like, what connection could you possibly have with someone of a different generation? What's your real motivation here? And I think it's good in a way that as a culture, we're more willing to throw the idea out there of wondering, hey, could there be something here to be questioned? But also, I feel like it takes away from, as we were just discussing, a lot of safety that people can feel with a mentorship position, with a older person who grants you space to feel free to do the thing, you know? Like, many of us, even to this day, come from queer backgrounds where maybe we didn't have the greatest relationship with the men in our lives. Maybe we don't have men that we can look to for, and not just gaining, but what does it mean to grow a beard and to style myself, to maintain my aesthetic, to be queer in this world and work a job and do all these different things? A majority of us still come from that kind of a background, you know? So, like, there still is very much a valid and very necessary and special thing that comes from that kind of a dynamic. So, I get it in a way, but also, like, if the vibe is fine, the vibe is fine. Sometimes, it's not a problem, and we don't need to presume that it's a problem, you know?
Absolutely. And beyond even all of these very specific things you've cited, James, uh, in queer people in general don't often have somebody, I mean, almost exclusively never have somebody in their nuclear family to consult on how to be a gay man, a gay woman, a gay or like a trans person, right? Any number of queer identities. And so it's so special and I think very valuable to one's journey to connect with people who have whose footsteps we walk in, whether we know it or not, and to learn from their experiences and wisdom.
Yeah, I think that when these guys approached me today, the message that I got was they wanted to talk to me because they recognized that I was probably quite firmly settled, in my life, that I'd had experiences that I was safe for them to ask me questions. Those, I think, are all the important things and good things about mentorship. But then I encounter from time to time the ooh factor. No,
Mm.
I said that wrong. That sounded like Diana Ross ooh, and what I meant was ew.
Ew. But I hear that, right? And I think sometimes again people underestimate, like, you know what, Cap, you've actually been the person to really bring this to me the most. I've sometimes referenced to you the gainer community at all, right? Inverted commas. And sometimes you're actually quite quick to remind me sometimes our community is not that much of a community. Just because
Yeah.
it's a gaggle and a collective of bitches does not mean there's a lot of community within the space. And I think that this is good advice for anyone who is new or exploring things. It is good to remember that while there are a multitude of people within it, and there may even be plenty of people around you, it does not mean they're there for the same reasons as you. It does not mean that they're there to connect in the way that you want to connect. And so, as we're kind of exploring here, sometimes the person who maybe is the person you could most affirmatively connect with, most safely, most confidently connect with, maybe someone a little bit older, maybe someone who, you know, you're not thinking to look at straight away because they're not the person you saw on Instagram before you decided to join Grommr, you know? So it is worth considering, right? Like, what is it you really want to get out of your gainer lived experience? What do you really want to have happen to you and with someone else? And consider that maybe someone who has a little more experience under their belt, someone who, by all intents and purposes, is more settled, is more secure in what they've got going on, might actually be the better person to connect with because they know what they're going on about. And if you want to get on that level, maybe bypass the guys who are fucking around and maybe talk to some guys who really want that thing, you know?
James, is this to say that we should regard members of our community as people and not objects?
I would never say that, Cappy, because that is not how we as a community operate. Everyone is an object and nothing makes anything unless it makes me money. Money on my Patreon and OnlyFans. That's the only thing that No, of course. Of course. Treat people like fucking people. And ultimately, to have to frame it as such feels like the most obvious thing in the world.
Yeah, but it
And
bears repeating, doesn't it?
but it bears repeat. You know, every now and again, we should probably come back to this point that, sometimes people are people, and maybe people should be treated like people, and that maybe if more people treated people like people, then people would treat you like people, and then things would be a little bit more chill and a little bit less agonizing for everybody involved.
So over the past 15 years, like, have you seen any major significant shifts in the gainer community, like both in terms of how, like, just trends that come along and also like how our people are relating to one another?
After our initial talk, I had been talking about Findom.
Sure.
Is that how you pronounce it? Findom?
Or Findom, yeah, because there's a
Oh,
dominant.
Findom. Okay,
Yeah, it
right,
has to
right,
do
right.
with financial dominance of an individual.
Right. So I was coaching and, like I wouldn't say supporting, but helping out this uh, student in Arkansas. And this was probably around the time that you and I met. And, I designed a workout program for him, and we talked every night. And, he would do his workout and he'd give me the, results of how much of this he had done and how big his belly was getting and all of that kind of stuff. And he graduated and now he's a professional and, flew all over America a couple of years ago to see Taylor Swift, 15 times. And,
Oh.
and I mean, I just find all of this really fun and fascinating. But he got involved with Findom and he was really good at it. And I mean, he has ended up with this virtual, like, harem of guys who are feeding him every day. And, once again, like, wow, what, it's not everybody in my circle who encounters something like this.
That's really remarkable. I need to cash in on this at some point.
I think you actually, I mean, with your personality, you could go far with this.
Cap, while we have you here on this call, why don't you give us an example of Fin Dom? Why don't you turn a little bit of energy on us and see how far we get?
Fin Dom, hey there. I know you like this beef. Don't you want to see more of it? Want to buy me some sushi?
See, now that almost feels too sweet. I feel like I don't know. My understanding of Fin Dom is you've got to be a little bit more like, hey, pay up. A little bit more like, what's that T.S. Madison meme where she's just
Nailed.
in front of that,
Yeah, with the
yeah,
clacking
a little bit of
fingernails.
that. I feel like it's
Oh
maybe a
man.
little bit more of that energy.
See, I need to get some acrylics first, and then I will be a true Fin Dom.
Some acryl fix for them sausage-like fingers of yours.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I see it with more of a somewhat bullying edge. Like,
Oh.
you messaged me yesterday, and I told you I didn't have time, and now you're messaging me again. I don't chat with anyone for less than a pizza.
Iconic.
See,
See,
there we go.
see, I just need Phil to coach me on this clearly, because he's got it locked. Got
Yeah,
There you
okay.
go.
Well, let's workshop this
absolutely. I would
because
love that.
your well-being is so important to me.
And I appreciate that.
There we go. And if you would
Yeah.
like to subscribe to Phil's coaching services, you can relay your messages through us at thiccradio@gmail.com, and we will pass on your queries to Phil, and we will take like 10% commission off the top. It'll be a true capitalistic venture. We'll all make our money. It'll be fabulous.
I yeah, I have loved all of my agents.
Oh, fantastic.
I have this ongoing conversation with a couple of my friends on Grommr about camera angles.
Hmm.
And, there's this one British guy who is just blown up like crazy. But, and I mean, I am all thumbs when it comes to taking selfies. So I would not know how to, perform a hot camera angle on my belly. But, this guy makes himself look huge. And of course, you wonder what he looks like in real life. But that's like me complaining about my fax machine in the current world of technology. Camera angles are so yesterday. Now we're manipulating everybody with our phone with using AI.
It's very true. It's a
Yeah.
whole new frontier of morphs and edits and fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. I grew that belly in 5 minutes.
And so, as a way to sort of round out the conversation today, you move quite often between Toronto and New York, and you've spent time connecting with people internationally. What similarities or differences have you noticed across these communities?
New Yorkers, in my experience, tend to be quite independent. Sure, they'll have their circle of friends, their family, et cetera, but they're much more used to going off to a bar by themselves or, checking out the bathhouse where the fat guys go, etc. Toronto still has, to me, more of a neighborhoody kind of thing, which sort of boils down to cliques.
Mm.
And I've never been to a Gromoff in New York, but I've been to three, I think, here in Toronto. And, I mean, for the most part, I've found them painful, because every, everybody sticks with the gainers or feeders that they already know, and they're uncomfortable branching out and getting to know somebody else. So that would be the difference that I've noticed.
I feel like the takeaway from today is there's clearly so much more opportunity out there with people that maybe, if you're listening to this, there's probably more opportunity out there with the people that you're not thinking to look at first. And I think many of us, especially in the younger generations, are inclined to the same mistakes, right? To be more obsessively focused on the people we see being made popular online because we've decided that if they have the higher follower count, if they post certain pictures as seen with certain people, they must have greater access to the fun, to the results that we're looking for. But again, as we've just talked about, Cap's relationship with Phil here has obviously helped with Cap's incredible growth and journey. And as Phil shared, that there are other people who've benefited from Phil's coaching. And I'm sure that there are many other members of the community that have benefited from people who have more experience and, again, more of a clear indication that they want to make the thing really happen. So maybe that's the lesson in all this. Like, yeah, go to the events, yeah, have a good time, but also like, talk to someone a bit different.
I wear several different hats professionally, and I encounter people that I normally wouldn't encounter in my life. And when they find out that I'm writing about and I'm involved with the transgender community, there are a lot of people who have no qualms about letting me know that their back is up to what I'm doing and to the transgender community. And I say to them, do you have any transgender friends? And they'll say no. And I say, you should get some. And that's exactly the message here. Do you have any twink friends? You should get some. Do you have any elders from the community in your life? You should get some. There's so much to learn and, so much really positive energy for so many young gainers that I talk with. That's really what they want. They want to feel like their kink is being embraced and that they're safe getting fat.
Phil, this has been such a wonderful opportunity to get to know a little bit more about you, to explore more of your history, and to, I think, reaffirm what we already know, that more of us need to make more of an effort with the elder statesmen in our lives, in this community, to give people more of their flowers because you deserve your flowers. And to the listeners, I really hope you take on board today some of the things we've been discussing. And I do hope that if you have the opportunity to go to a Grommr or any other kind of big boy bear event in your near future, don't just look at the people who have the Instagram followers. Look at the people who look like they really want to connect, because I would hazard a guess, if you connect with them, you may be more inclined to have the experience that you are looking for. But again, Phil, I just want to say thank you for your time today. Where can the listeners find you online?
They can find me on Grommr, and I am Ganza. Thank you so much, James and Tim. This has really been wonderful. And Dada, I love you.
Well, y'all, that is a wrap now here on Thicc Radio. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave us a good review. If you liked this special episode, share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram and BlueSky at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram at thiccymouse, on Grommr at orpheus.
And you can find me on Instagram and other fine social media platforms at the Captain Barra.
You can also find us on social media at Thicc Radio or visit our website at thiccradio.com.
Consider supporting the show by donating to our PayPal or by subscribing to our Patreon, where you can enjoy extra helpings, a behind-the-scenes conversation with this week's guest where nothing is off the table.
And if you send us a letter to thiccradio@gmail.com, we might just read it on the show.
That's all for now, folks. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Bye, Pat.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is an independent production.
Artwork, media design, editing, and production by James Heinzen.
With original theme music by CYMK.
This has just been such a great experience.
Oh, good. I'm glad.